Hey everyone, we're back and we are at the point in our barn door build where you can see it's a little bit dusty, but that's okay. I've got the 2 coats of stain on the barnwood doors, and I've got 2 coats of a pretty thick but fast drying polyurethane. It's not the typical wipe on poly. I wanted these to be really kind of a thick layer of polyurethane. And I've got the 2L pieces that we saw in the last segment, where I've now put them together and I've channeled out in each of the individual pieces. I glued them together and pin nailed in the stub tenons, and so now after drying and sanding, we're basically ready to put them around the frame of our door and put them around the door panel to make the frame of our door. The first thing I want to do, however, is whenever you make this type of a frame and panel door, you never want to make the frames exactly the same width as the inside of this channel if it's not plywood. This is solid wood, obviously glued up panels of solid wood or pieces of solid wood, and so it's going to expand and contract. So now it's in the winter where I'm at, so everything is pretty much dried out, and come summertime, a lot of people make this same mistake with wood floors also, where they don't leave the proper spacing between the last piece of the wood floor and the wall, and what ends up happening is the summer comes along, the humidity gets cranked up, and all of a sudden you've got buckling pieces of wood or cracking floors in your house. So what we do is we cut them about, these channels are about 3/4 of an inch deep, and the door will basically go about a 1/2 inch in on either side. So I've got a 1/4 of an inch where if I push it to one side, the edge might show, or the corner of the edge, if it shrinks anymore. Also, if it expands, I want to make sure it expands evenly and doesn't expand towards one side, leaving this end exposed. So what I do is I cut these little pieces of foam. You can use like that foam covering that goes around pipes or something like that. Anything that's going to give you a little bit of play, squishy play, I guess, or whatever. Please don't comment on that. Anyway, anything that gives you a little play, a little bit of spring, but can still hold some weight on it. And all I'm going to do is take these, I've cut them to about 3/8 of an inch thick, and I'm just going to insert them in the door. I typically do 3 in each side. It's probably overkill, but I want to make sure that they rest pretty snugly around the bottom of the door. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the sides, and the sides are a little bit harder to get in here because the pieces are wider. Again, you can use whatever kind of foam that you think you have, as long as it can apply a little bit of back pressure. It shouldn't be really weak foam here or whatever. It should be able to take some pressure against it and not completely collapse. But make sure you put it in there really good and tight so that it films. A lot of people do these rubber, like little tiny, when they make regular cabinet doors, they use these little tiny rubber balls that are, pliable, and you can actually squeeze them between the 1/4 inch groove of a raised panel door, and they'll do the same kind of thing. Well, this is just the same version, but something a little bit different. Now I'm going to go over here. I don't know if you can see me, but I'm just putting it on the edge of the cabinet. On the edge of the frame to get it, kind of pushed in there and wedged in there real good. Now you have to just make sure that they're not going to interfere with the actual tenon. As you can see, I've got this 1L I'm going to set over here so that it's kind of out of the way. And I've got the glue that I need here. There was another, sorry, wasn't quite as ready as I like to be for some of these. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, and this takes a little work. It's actually helpful to have a partner or a friend help you. I don't have that available today, but these need to get done, so the show must go on. So what I'm going to do is just kind of set in one corner, and then I'm going to go down here and work the other corner in. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it up here and get everything kind of down in there. I'm going to take a little rubber mallet and just very gently make sure that this kind of comes closed. And you don't have to worry as long as it kind of gets. Alright, there you go. So now it's in enough to where it's all the way against the one side. And I'm pretty much ready. I know what's. Okay, so a quick lesson here. I don't know if you can see it from where you're at. I hope you can. But this is the tenon right here, and this is the shoulder of this tenon right here. And I can tell that that no matter how hard I push now between the panel and the edge of the stile of the frame here, I have about 3/8 of an inch sticking out beyond the shoulder, and that's really what I want. You'll know that you have a good fit when you do that. So I'm pretty much ready to, and this is going to be kind of quick and dirty here. I'm going to pretty much just put a glue on, use my finger to get that all spread on all sides of the tenon. And I know I've seen Norm Abrams do a nice brush, that's really cool, but I couldn't find mine, so I'm just going to put it in there. I don't know, there's a guy on YouTube who has a channel like Woodworking for Mere Mortals or something. I really like that guy because, you know, not everything is pretty, but it works. So I'm going to do the same thing under here and just make sure I get plenty of glue on all surfaces. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the other rail and stile combination. And you should know that, I mean, I've already put in the pieces of the foam on two sides, 3 of them each, so that I can, and you'll notice, like, once the finish is on here, like 2 coats of polyurethane, like the heavy stuff, you know, I'm good to go. I mean, you can kind of, don't beat it up or scratch it, but you can kind of make sure that, you know, it can take a little bit of abuse while you're there. Because what we're going to do is, when this is done curing and we sand and we put the stain coat on the on these stiles and rails of our door, then we're going to coat, after we get that, we're going to coat the whole piece with 2 or 3 coats of the wipe-on poly. So we are going to sand it one more time and make sure that, you know, we buff out anything that's going to be, you know, have any scratchy appearance or anything like that. So, I mean, don't go nuts with it, like, but we can get away with a little bit of roughhousing here with this. Okay, so now I have to do the same exercise, which is get this guy in, and this is a little bit trickier, so again, don't tell anybody I'm wiping the gum under the table here. It's so unprofessional, but I do it all the time. I want to make sure that I get everything lined up, and it's a little tricky to do, and especially because these things, they bow a little bit. There we go. Okay, so the good news is I got all the ends in. Now, what's key before this glue dries and everything is, one, to make sure that you got everything. Take your little rubber mallet. Yeah, that's looking good. Okay, so now, what I'm going to do, yeah, that joins up very tightly. I hope the camera's not too far away, but, you know, this is the first time I'm kind of getting a wide shot like this. I don't know if you can see me on camera, but I guess that's not important. Okay. All right, it's all snugged up. Now, I've already have the L, so this corner of this L is already done. It's at 90 degrees. You remember the last segment? We made each of these 90 degrees. It's all good to go. Now all I have to do is just make sure these are 90 degrees, which they will be if I just line them up and clamp them. So that's what I'm going to do. You get one end first. Yeah, these are perfectly flush and perfectly lined up. So let me get a clamp on them real quick. And I'm going to put the clamps just higher than they need to be here. Want to get that? I'll tell you what I mean about that in a minute. I apologize because I'm trying to get the clamps in because this is kind of fast setting glue. So I'm trying to work and talk at the same time, which is never a good thing for me. Okay, so we've got that. Let's tighten that guy down really good. Get a little consistent squeeze out on the glue. Okay, there's no glue on that side. All right, and then I got one more clamp to put on this side. All right, I've got the clamps on. Now, the important part is, one of the important parts is, I've got to check for square. So that's why I leave these guys a little bit high so I can get a tape measure under here, and I don't go right up to the corner so I can make sure that I wrap the corner. Now, when I set up the build for this thing, I think I remember telling you that as long as this L was 90 degrees and that L was 90 degrees, when I put them together, if I line them up, all four angles should be 90 degrees, which gives you a perfectly square box, if you will, or frame. So we're going to check my math, and I know you can't see the thing. It'd be nice to have an overhead camera so you could keep me honest, but I'm going to be honest with you. All right, I am 94 1/4 exactly, and I'm excited because that's the way the other ones turned out. I already did one ahead of this. And 94 1/4. So it just goes to show you that if you do a little bit of planning, you can make sure that things come out, pretty precise. If the doors weren't squared, I would have to try to square them up first. But these are very big doors, obviously, and so I wanted to do what I could do ahead of time to make sure that I had very little trouble, if any, getting the things square. And for me, putting together two L's, making sure that each L was 90 degrees, and then lining them up and making them square was the easy way to do it. Now, the next steps here is basically, I'm not going to show you that either, just because for time's sake, and I already talked too much, but we're going to do the same finishing schedule on the stiles and the rails as we did for the panels. We've got a coat of dark mahogany, or dark walnut, I forget. And then we have a coat of, dark walnut, and then we have a coat of red mahogany on top of that, and you can see it gives you a very rich brown appearance, and it's not too red. And then we're going to put a couple coats of poly. Now, as you can see, the inside shoulder here of this style is touching, or sometimes touching, it's actually not quite touching the panel. And I don't, even though I've got this protected with polyurethane, which was one of the reasons I did the panels first, it's a little bit more work to come back and do the stiles and rails later rather than doing the whole thing. But like I said, I want to make sure this thing doesn't shrink up and all of a sudden I've got a stripe of unfinished wood, on one of the sides or something like that. So all we're going to do is we're going to just put some paper or some tape so that we can get very close to the edge. So you're going to basically tape or put paper all along the inside of your frame. You don't have to cover the whole thing, just a little bit. And then you're going to take your sponge brush or whatever you're applying your stain with, whatever applicator, and then you're going to go ahead and stain this on both sides. Prior to that, I'm going to make sure that the new wood joints that I just put together here are glued and the glue is dry and they're all sanded and smooth and everything like that. And then I will go ahead and put the stain on there. When we come back to next segment, you're going to see we're going to start cutting the steel and applying some of the hardware that we need to hang these doors. So that'll be kind of something new for this channel for sure. And then you're going to have to see, you know, I'm a big fan of jigs, and we're going to come back and we're going to make a jig to put the metal on, because as you're going to see, these doors have to be perfectly square, meaning that when they ride the rails up on top, the rail up on top, they've got to close together so that there's little or no seam along where the two doors meet. And I've found that the best way to do that is to make sure that when I apply the hangers, the straps of steel that go on top, that I would have a jig to make sure everything is exactly the same distance from the top of the door, so that when they close together, the tops of the doors will be even where they meet, and also the sides will be squared up, you know, where they meet. Just when you thought you got rid of me, I forgot a step, which I'm turning this on literally seconds after I shut the camera off. I realized that I did not put the brad nails between here. So what I want to do is just go ahead and on both sides, I want to make sure that I am putting some brad nails in, and it really, I've seen this technique a few times. I believe that it does go to help hold the tenon in place, but the glue should really do that. I mean, like I said, if you've tried to break two pieces of wood that are glued along your end grain, you're going to take half of the part of the piece of wood of one of them away with the other. But I just believe that this really kind of helps, and I do it to both sides, underside and top side, and then I'll just make sure that that's done so that I can double check these stub tenons and make sure that they are good to go. And they are. So now, with that, we are finally finished, and we will wait for the glue to dry. Sorry about that, and we'll see you next time.